So when you think about it, about 7 weeks from date of injury, you're in front of a judge, which is, I always say, light speed in terms of most court proceedings. So that's one of the things that makes the Rhode Island system so good. By the same token, the employer can also avail themselves of that short time period. So if they think someone's been on too long, or they want to do something to change or modify someone's benefits, they get quick access to the court. But it's really made the Rhode Island court system work. Workers' comp works primarily because of the efficiency of that system. So it's a big advantage. And in the meantime, many people know about in Rhode Island, we have TDI, temporary disability insurance benefits. And if employers contesting your claim and you have to file a petition with the court, while you're waiting, you can apply for TDI. So if it looks like someone's, this claim could be dragged out, the insurance company's taking a hard stand, we tell employees, look, you're going to get either TDI or workers' comp within 6 to 8 weeks of your injury. And so just hang in there. If you have to hang in that long, that's really fairly short period of time when you think about it, and the money will be paid retroactively to you. So the procedure is extremely important. That 21 days is a very important feature to remember, and you should not be waiting very long. Mass, on the other hand, much longer time period, so I'll let Lenny go into that one.
But as you can tell, just from Bob's summary on that, I mean, it's a very, workers' compensation is a technical, complex field, which, before I get into the mass system, I just like to say this is why people should not try to go it alone, because there are just so many weapons and tools available to insurance companies and their lawyers to play, I hate to use this term, but to play games with, a claim that people become victim to it.
We like to call them trap doors. I mean, right? So they can just open up a little door and you fall through and you didn't even know what happened to you. Now you're coming to a lawyer who's trying to fix things. Water's going under the bridge, and we're trying to reroute things and fix them. If we were involved from the beginning, it would have been perhaps much easier.
I see.
As far as the mass system, it's a very, it's not quite as friendly as the Rhode Island system. Rhode Island has actually come a long way because it's now considered a model in many, many states as far as that are trying to improve their systems. They look to Rhode Island. Massachusetts, unfortunately, it's a much different system. There's one added step in Rhode Island, in Massachusetts rather. Typically, after an injury occurs in Massachusetts, you have to wait 30 days. So instead of 21, you're waiting 30 before you can even file a claim with the Department of Industrial Accidents. Instead of getting in front of a judge, though, there's one initial step, which they call conciliation. It's an alternate dispute resolution type of procedure where a conciliator who's an official of the Department of Industrial Accidents will try to sit down and mediate, so to speak, the issues between both sides. Unfortunately, that official does not have the power to order an insurance company to commence payment of workers' compensation. So what ends up happening is you lose about 4 to 6 weeks waiting to get into a conciliation. Now, perhaps you may be able to resolve some of the issues at conciliation, but if not, you have then approximately an 8 to 10 to 12-week wait, depending on the time of year and the calendars of the judges, before you get to a conference level. And at the conference level, that's when you would get the first time, your first bite at the apple in front of a judge to hopefully convince the judge to commence payment of compensation benefits to your client. It's a very long, lengthy process. There's also one other major difference between Massachusetts and Rhode Island. Massachusetts is governed by what they call Massachusetts board rates. A lot of physicians are restricted to getting certain type of payment. Just like a doctor, you go to a doctor and you use your Blue Cross. Well, Blue Cross has a fee schedule that they would use to pay that particular physician for that service. In workers' compensation, Rhode Island has a medical advisory board which kind of operates the same way. In Rhode Island, however, those medical advisory board rates are very similar to what someone would get under private health insurance. In Massachusetts, those board rates have not been changed for about 30 years. So a doctor or physician who would typically charge, let's say, $100 for a service would get, under the Mass board rates, about a third of that cost. So you run into another problem in Massachusetts, which is most doctors don't even want to take Massachusetts workers' compensation cases because they know that the reimbursement rate is going to be a lot lower than what they would typically receive under private health insurance. So the Mass system has a lot of barriers, unfortunately, that make it a lot more difficult. But on the other end, once you are on the system, there are a lot of benefits that are not available in Rhode Island that typically would help to rehabilitate people. And when you settle cases in Massachusetts, if it ever gets to that point, the medical part of the claim stays open, whereas in Rhode Island they don't.
Now, in the short amount of time that we have left, give us a little insight to the mystery of those calculations. I know people have rehabilitation, they sometimes have medical, sometimes they have pharmaceutical, and then compensation for their salary. What's the big magical formula that helps us know what this means in dollars and cents to people in the brief time we have left?
Well, speaking to benefits, we'll talk about Rhode Island. The basic person, we'll call it a lost time claim. Someone comes in because they've been hurt at work and they're out of work because of the injury. The two basic benefits are a weekly payment, weekly compensation, and medical benefits. That's what most people get. Workers' comp, I always say to people, is a sort of a compromise between employers and employees. When that system was created, if you had a typical car accident and someone got hurt and they came in to see us in Rhode Island, we'd say, well, look, you've got to prove it was the other side's fault, first of all. And if you prove it was their fault, you could recover 100% of your medical expenses, 100% of your gross pay lost, pain and suffering. Those are the three essential elements in a car accident. Workers' comp, as Lenny said earlier, is no fault. That was what part of the compromise. They said to the employees, hey, look, good news. Everybody gets paid in a workers' comp system, even if it was nobody's fault. Even if it was your own fault, it doesn't matter. All that matters is, was it job-related or not? But those three pieces of damages are going to be changed. You're going to get all your medical expenses paid. You're going to get a percentage of your wages, not your full gross pay, and there will not be any pain and suffering. That's a big take-back in workers' comp. So when people hear that, they're oftentimes surprised. But they also realize that in many cases, they would be collecting nothing if they had to prove that there was fault involved.
And would that happen in Massachusetts, the same structure?
Same basic structure. The percentages are a little bit different. There is no pain and suffering, and unfortunately in Massachusetts there's no TDI either, so that's another factor where you're kind of dealing with from a disadvantage under the Mass system.
Now, so many lawyers, I have to ask this in the brief time left, so many lawyers do advertise, come see us about workers' comp. Is that pay dirt for lawyers? What is that about? Why is there a reason to go to you?
Less seem to be looking for workers' comp business than personal injury business, which
difference.
tends to be a little bit more lucrative. A lawyer typically in a personal injury case would be paid a percentage of the gross recovery at the end of the claim. One great thing about workers' comp is the injured worker doesn't pay us. I say that right off the bat, and their eyes generally light up and they smile because many of them will ask you, how do I pay you? I'm out of work. The law says if we get the insurance company to do things that they're not doing voluntarily for the worker, the insurance company will pay our fees. We are not charging the employee any fee. That's for whether we get them on weekly comp, whether we get a medical bill paid, get them authorized to have a medical procedure, get them SCAR benefits for disfigurement they've had as a result of the injury, loss of use benefit. The only time we get any money out of an employee's money is if we settle a claim in Rhode Island or Massachusetts. We get a percentage of the lump sum settlement, typically 20%, where in a personal injury case it's usually 33 1/3%. So it's a pretty good deal for the employee. Yeah, and they're not reaching into their pocket to pay the lawyer.
And does it matter whether someone calls you the minute they're injured or if they're 2 weeks into it or a month into a treatment?
Well, my feeling with that is I always tell my clients to try to get to an attorney, a competent attorney, a respectable one, as quickly as possible. I mean, 2 weeks in or a month in, it really is not the end of the world, but the sooner you get into a lawyer, the better off you'll be.
There is so much that we need to discuss with this. I'm thinking that there probably will be questions about this, and we may need to handle this next session as well as begin to talk about the Social Security issues that are coming up. At the end of our program, we always ask if you do have questions, please feel free to email abcglawfirm.com. And with us today were Bob Audette and Lenny Cordeiro. This is Legal Matters. We appreciate the fact that you've given us these insights, and I imagine that there's going to be much more to talk about in our upcoming sessions. So thank you very much for tuning in, and happy holidays.